Hi, my friends.
Hey,
Hi, good night.
H-
guys. Good
How are you
evening.
guys?
Fine.
Fine. Okay. Um, we're here to start our study about this amazing book that we are going through in this month, Workers of Eternal Life. Um, as always, before we start, our dear sister Nora will bring us some prayer so we can relax, get more focused, and then we can properly start talking about this amazing book.
All right. Let's just dive beautifully and gracefully into that vibration this evening, asking God above all and our mentors for inspiration. That tonight you guide us into the right path, to the right steps, that whatever message we are needing, our hearts, that we can utilize, that we can spread to others, and that we can continue moving forward. We ask for those that are watching live or on demand are also protected, enlightened, and always loved. And of course, taking this time to continue sending lots and lots and lots of love to our brothers and sisters who are going through difficulties in Ukraine, but of course to the entire world. That will say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. And with that, we ask permission to begin. And so be it.
Beautiful. Thank you, dear, so
Beautiful.
much. We are today on chapter 9, which is called Praise and Gratitude. Before we start actually talking about this chapter, it would be nice for us to revisit very quickly where we were last week when Nora stopped. At the end of last chapter, after that beautiful story that Nora brought us, we see Andrea Luis making deep reflections and looking at all those suffering spirits. He wonders, and he starts wondering if he should feel more sorry for the persecuted or the persecutors. We touched that situation last week. In the end, who suffered the most? He was looking to those spirits in that amount of suffering, suffering a lot in those dark spiritual regions. And at the end of the day, who is the most suffering one? Because as we've seen, he started making reflections about those that are being persecuted and are not being persecutors anymore. So they have maybe reached a couple of light, but their life is still very, very sad because they are facing now all those consequences that they planted for themselves. Furthermore, he says at the end of chapter 8 that he also kept in his heart the traces of human vicissitudes, remembering that he had also suffered a lot and made other people suffer. We remember, and we talked about this lady on the first book, Nasolar, and we remember this lady called Elisa that we saw. That she arrived at Nosolar blind by syphilis, and we saw that she had contracted precisely in the relationships with Andrea Luis when she was employee in his family's house. So he was starting to make those knowledges like um, the when you are not that open-minded when it comes to spirituality, you're not still ready to face your responsibilities. And we are seeing an Andrea Luis totally different, so different that he starts to foresee those things that he will have to go through to actually be a dematerialized spirit. So let's this I just thought it was nice to brought this reflection before we enter chapter 9 properly. So we entered this beautiful chapter 9, praise and gratitude. And Luis tells that when the caravan, and Nora was talking about that caravan with us last week, to which he belonged, was when they were leaving the abscess they had visited, that they all, despite the difficulties, left very satisfied. However, they were all very silent on the way back. Zenobia told them that the work had been blessed and fruitful. She said that even though they didn't immediately rescue any of those suffering ones, they should be very happy because the seed of love and good had been planted on in all those hearts. So that's very, very nice. She said that those spirits already had their vibratory situation altered, and that the other day many sought help in that institution that they were called Casa Transitoria. Um, when they managed to see Casa Transitoria, as we said, they were reaching the place. Andrea Luis was impressed by the movement. Zenobia explained that this happened because it was during the sleep schedule of those incarnates, and that during sleep, many of us take advantage of the opportunity for encounters and reunions. That's very nice. When they reached the entrance door, they found Gotuzo, and we've talked about him on chapter um, 5, if I'm not mistaken. They found Gotuzo and another brother that Andrea Luis still didn't know. Gattuso informed Zenobia that the collaboration services in the crust, together with the technicians who organized some expiatory incarnations, had been satisfactorily carried out, as we've seen. Very nice. Zenobia thanked them and invited them to participate in the prayers of praise and gratitude to God. And this is a beautiful, beautiful meeting that they are going to start. Guys, they sit at a table, and Andrea Luis says that at the head of that table, in the background, there was a large transparent screen, which, according to him, was made of diaphanous fabric similar to a very thin gauze. Um, Prayer is very beautiful, and we, of course, because of the time, we cannot talk that much about the prayer, but it's really worth reading the prayer because it's beautiful, beautiful. Zenobia is a beautiful spirit. So the prayer is very beautiful, and basically it is to thank God for the opportunity to serve all those sufferings and those in need, and actually for the opportunity to live daily life with them. Once again, we remember, and I had made these notes here because we do, when we see this chapter, we do remember Saint Francis of Assisi, because in the book there's this part when he he's still a young man and he was praying and he starts to listen to Jesus Christ's voice, and then he starts to ask what he should do to be closer to Jesus. And Jesus told him that if he wants to get closer to him, he should always and every day look for those in need, those in much suffer, because that is where Jesus Christ is. This is beautiful. And we see Zenobia making this prayer and making this beautiful reflection about how blessed they are because they are living within the needy spirits. So returning to the prayer, Andrelli said that that prayer was one of the most beautiful he had listened so far. An interesting observation for us to emphasize here in a practical way is that Zenobia, when she starts to pray, she asks them to keep repeating her words. This is very, very interesting because, and this is worth mentioning, when we are at churches or even spiritist centers, a couple of times everyone is thinking on their own business. People are not connected, and we see her before they start praying, we see her asking properly, please repeat what I am saying. So the prayer maybe would have other vibratory consequences. After that praying, um, the prayer of thanksgiving that we are talking about, Zenobia asked them to observe and to be silent. Andrea Louise says that not much time passed, and that scream, which we were talking about, this big scream, light scream, it was suddenly lit and began to expel rays of wonderfully blue brightness. He said that that glow fell on them like very tiny sapphires, and that they gave new energies, revitalizing their being. This beautiful, beautiful image. After a long moment, Luciana, and we've talked about her, Nora and Chris have talked about her. She is this nurse in the spiritual plane. After a long moment, she, with her clairvoyance, spoke and said that she was on the screen. She was seen on the screen, the figure of an old man surrounded by silver green light. She said that it was Bernardino, and that he held out his right hand to Zenobia, blessing her. Luciana said that due to the love vibrations near the Casa Transitoria, that region, Bernardino could not make himself visible to everyone, even if he wanted to. And as we've seen, clairvoyance is a very special mediumship to which those mediums they can see the spirits either they want it or not. Um, Brother Bernardino raised his hands to the heavens, asking for divine understanding, and then, as with the blue light, they received a shower of light, this time in green, a more vibrant green. This is beautiful, guys. It's really worth reading this book. Um, so another time passed, and again, Luciana manifested herself. This time, she said that the vision was stunning. Guys, this is beautiful. This part of the book is very beautiful. It was stunning. She saw a celestial blessed woman with a very beautiful face, and according to Luciana, she carried in her lap a superb bouquet of snowy lilies exhaling an intoxicating perfume. Luciana said that this sister wore a velvet tunic carved from a fabric similar to silk and made of snow. It's beautiful. The image is beautiful. The spirit of high luminosity looked at them kindly, and then she threw those flowers at them. They got involved for an indescribable amount of perfume and brightness and happiness. Furthermore, this enlightened sister asked to pass a message to Brother Gattuso, and then we start to see who she was. Then Sister Luciana begins to deliver the message. That beautiful spirit was called Leticia. She had discarnated for 32 years and had been the mother of Brother Gattuso while they were on Earth. Um, at that point, Sister Leticia left the screen and hugged. This is beautiful, guys, because and we've talked about this in our studies, this possibility of a medium being a medium in the spiritual plane. So high order spirits, even in the spiritual sphere, can talk to those spirits that are in the lower zone. um, Leticia left the screen. She hugged Luciana, who started to cry, and said, "How generous you are, self sacrificing benefactor. Yes, I am ready. I will gladly give you my body." So we start to see that Leticia will talk through the medium Luciana. And here we are seeing a more ethereal, this beautiful spirit incorporating in the reality, a more materialized spirit to communicate with the child who is still in lower areas. This is beautiful. And we have talked in our studies about Chico Xavier's experience, that inter-existing experience that's beautiful that Chico had with Professor Acolano Pires. Andrea Luis says that at that moment, Luciana's face changed and she put on a beatific smile. When talking to Gattuso, she very affectionately started talking about his need to let go of the old self. But I confess that what caught my attention at this point was this sentence here. She said this: the teacher, and she was referring to Jesus, the teacher takes advantage of the disciples' usable qualities in a certain area of learning, putting off out of mercy the improvement of certain obscure areas of the personality. This is beautiful because we see even though we are not perfect, we can be used as Jesus Christ's instruments. Um, and as we've seen in previous chapters, notwithstanding the moral difficulties Gattuso was experiencing, and we saw all those drama things about his family, he was being used as a doctor in that Casa Transitoria. And she asked Gattuso how he would lead, um, how he was managing to think about that, the sick, how he could treat all those sick spirits, try to heal them while he himself remained bitter with those who had hurt him. How could he be a doctor if he was in that amount need of a doctor? From that speech of Leticia Gattuso's mother, it was very clear, and we see this reading the book, that he was postponing the reincarnation, parking in that Casa Transitoria in a deliberate way of stop. And as we see, and as we have been talking here, each Wednesday, the progress is the law of God. She said a lot of beautiful things to encourage him, and he was so caught up in that magnetism that he agreed. Then she asked him, um, what is your answer, my son? To which he replied, I'm ready. This is beautiful. She was super happy and said she would prepare his reincarnation in the family environment to resolve those hurts from the past. So that's how I finished my chapter. Sorry, guys, I used more time than I should, but this chapter is so beautiful and it's very long.
Uh, so huge chapter. So let's chapter 10, Purifying Fire. André begins the chapter explaining that the following morning, the transitory house, Casa Transitoria, had already received them a new place to get there. André also tells us that they receive help from other works come from other help houses nearby. Talking to Father Hipólito, André tries to clarify some doubts about what's going to happen. Father Hipólito invites André to check what's happening in the courtyard and explain that aid institutions such as this one can fly great distance. The law that govern dense matter are not the same ones that preside over the transitory manifestations. Only now incarnates began understood problems inherent to the atomic energy present on the dense sphere. The electric discharge of the ethereal atom in our sphere make things possible that human minds think could be impossible. This part is so interesting because Father Hipólito also comments that with the progress of the scientific investigation, incarnations are able to understand only about one eighth of the sphere of existence. In other words, we can see only 4% of the entire universe. That other 96% we completely really don't know. Father Hipólito still commented that vision and hearing are two doors that could expand our research, although we keep them quite restricted. Sunlight compress the basic colors that can see by human eyes, being able to see colors from red, violet, and the most people cannot see beyond blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. They cannot detect indigo and violet perfectly. There are other colors in the spectrum that correspond to the vibration that human eyes is unable to detect. There are infrared and the ultraviolet rays which the human is able to identify but is unable to see visibly. The same thing happened, I think, Father Hippolyto don't mention about sound, infrasound and ultrasound, but the same happened with them. Andre explained that was a huge work move to house to a new place and describe all those machines being prepared by co-work to take off. Zenobia calls them to help with magnetic defenses in order to use the most co-work's preparation for the flight. Andrea describes that the fence bands were lying down horizontally made of a dark substance and imitating electric waves repelling energy about 6 feet, about 5 meters, I think, around the entire house. Zenobia have to take all the spirit who approach the house before lifting. We display genuine size to get in. Will display genuine signs of moral transformation. Geronimo explained that those spirits would display lights around them as signs. They were peaceful at work when the indescribable atmospheric bolt light up the dark sky. In intense light of awesome beautiful rip through the dense fog to top to bottom. Andrea could hear the crowd scream, some of them in supplication, others with hate, but it was clear who had light and who had darkness around. Andrea described a devastating scene around. Zenobia calls most of the workers to pray at the room pray, and they explained that electrical forces would be enough to transit house take off, but it also need the mental magnetic emanation that would help in the initial takeoff impulse. Andrea tell us that was soon as Zenobia started to pray, she light us completely, and the transitory house start to take off, climbing vertically about 1 hour to the house moved horizontally. The trip took 3 hours and 35 minutes to reach its destination to keep the fraternal service. Chapter is so huge. We invite everyone to read because it's impossible to read the complete chapter here. So the next chapter, 11, new friends. This chapter begins with the group led by Jerome and André, Luciana, Father Hipólito, leaving Fabiano's transitory house, going to Earth to complete the task of helping in the process of 5 disincarnate. They would still keep in contact with Fabiano's house, Fabiano Transitory's house, as a reference point of the work. Geronimo explained to Andrea that not every disincarnation needs help or special treatment. This type of mission is actually a coordinate of services. Some workers who carry out the mission on Earth deserve the consideration of those who supervise them spiritually. They devote great care to this work, protecting their spirit of influence from discouragement and lack of motivational research, while allow them to analyze the importance of ministry of the truth and the light of the universe. The group reached a small house, the first visit, where Geronimo introduced them to Dimas, an incarnate fellow spirit in dire straits suffering for hypertonic cirrhosis. Dima has been a co-worker in our assistant's work with a great medianistic capabilities. He came from our spirit colony to devote himself on a huge task in order to carry out the divine plans better. The bedroom had some radiated energy, indicating that constant visitation of high spirits. The group arrives in the simple home in Rio, the second visit, with a touch domestic scene. An elderly gentleman was lying on the small divan. He was displaying symptoms of tuberculosis. He was talking to two young boys around 6 and 8 years old, explained to them that life continues after that, and he will never leave them, even they no longer see him with their body eyes. Fabio always worked with a great dedication, although he's not a medium with attacks. However, he is a balanced man, a devote of meditation and spirituality. Because of this, he has been an excellent giver of magnetic energies even since his youth, helping with spiritual work assistance. Several mentors in our column have a high appreciation about his work. Free from passions, Brother Fabio always gave enlightenment teachings to this family and friends about eternal life. He knew how to live, and now he know well to die. Geronimo led the group to a large, comfortable apartment, the third visit, in the modern high-rise in the elegant city neighbors in Rio. And elderly lady was lying in bed, showing apparent signs of heart disease. She had two young women beside her, but Geronimo explained that she is a Sister Albina, belongs to the high organization of the Spirit Colony. She has been working in Protestant evangelical circles in the Presbyterian Church, teaching Christian lessons to children and youths. André explained that a beautiful woman, a friend from the spiritual sphere, arrived saying that there is a stronger request in Albina favor to postpone a little more her disincarnate process. The group for visit arrives at the busy hospital, watch over many spiritual works and many activities happening at the same time between incarnates and disincarnates there. Geronimo introduced the group to Brother Bonifacio, a wonderful spirit companion who was there take care to Cavalcante, an elderly gentleman. He is a virtual human Catholic and self-sacrificed and so dedicated to help his neighbor. He came from our colony and he is abandoned by his relatives for renouncing material riches. Bonifacio explained that it has been hard to keep him calm because of some disincarnate relatives that constantly bother him. Despite the protection of the hospital, the poor soul has not prepared himself enough to break free from the flesh. He still feels deep attachment to those he loves, and this situation makes the effort extremely hard. However, we will keep watching him for the many favors we have received from him. The group arrived at the Christian Spirit Institution in a comfortable building with a few children sheltered in name of Jesus, and show Bezerra de Menezes welcomed the group, Hughie, hugged one by one with great joviality. Bezerra explained that dear Adelaide won't be a problem. Her medianistic ministry, her serve with patience, with orphans in this house of pieces, prepare her so for this. In a simple room where
Yes, internet connection here in Brazil is not, it's not being easy, guys. We're going through loads of very rainy days. Yes, Chris had to left. He was not at the beginning of his chapter, but he still had, from what I had from the book, he still had a couple of things, but that chapter is very big as well. Dear, what do you think? Do
I
we keep
wanted
on
to.
going?
We can keep on going, but before, let's see if he comes back. 'Cause, just
Yes,
to,
I do think he's gonna come back. Yes,
on the previous chapter. Well, let's start with the one where you made this beautiful
it's
point.
beautiful. Oh my
It's
gosh.
so beautiful when you're giving
Yes.
Gotito the advice, like you said, about how Jesus or God can use our qualities, whatever we have, right?
Yes.
But even
Yes.
before
He's
that,
here.
it was so beautiful. It
Keep on
says here,
going. Keep on going.
let go of old ideas for a better
Yes.
understanding. And I think
It's so beautiful.
that's pivotal. I mean, and just that act in itself is tough, right? Because our brains, I think too, they like the habit, they like things,
Easy. Exactly. Yes.
but in order for us to move forward, we have to try the best that we can to be okay with change, to be okay with stuff like that. So, you know, and a lot we have to. I know, like we've talked about John Joe Dispenza here too, and he's always talks about
Yes.
rewiring stuff. So, my brother. Mhm.
This thing that you brought, when it comes to, so sorry, Chris. So sorry, bro. Just this thing that Nora brought about being imperfect instruments and trying to overcome all those material bad habits that we have, but we're trying to face them and try to overcome them, and seeing that Jesus is so generous that he still will be with us and try to use us in while we are in that process. It's very, very, very beautiful. So sorry, bro, can go ahead.
So Bezerra explained that dear Adele won't be a problem. Her mediumistic ministry, her service with patience, with orphans in this house of pieces, prepared her soul for this time. Is in a simple room where Adele was resting. There are two young spirity girls surrounded by a several light. Adele tries to speak a few words with Bezerra, but gets very emotional with tears in her eyes. And Bezerra comforts her like a father, telling her to rest her thoughts in her heart. Bezerra de Menezes go to talk with Geronimo, and the rest of the group leaves them alone. So we meet Bezerra de Menezes.
The one and only.
the, the end of chapter.
Yes, okay, bro.
Yeah, and just to make some comments on those beautiful chapters that you had, Chris, I think the really interesting thing was when they described the question that they asked, when they were doing the cleansing of that fire, and it sounded like it was like a lot of energy. And I was reading this today. I mean, I have to say it was like 5 in the morning, so everything was very dark, and everything's silent. And so you're like feeling it. And he talked about how even the ground vibrated. Zzz. And I felt I was on the couch. I was like, oh my God, I need to come back. It was so powerful. But they ask a question that it is, how do we know if they're being sincere or not? As this fire is cleansing, how do we know that those spirits, and it
Yes,
describes the
I
aura,
thought that as well. Yes.
that aura, right, Chris, that you brought up when you mentioned about the darkness and the light, which is wonderful. I don't know if we can see this in a divine way where we sense the light, but it could also be the type of like technology that is available already to be
Yes.
able to
I have an interesting thing. We
share.
have a friend here in Brazil. She's a medium, and unfortunately, because of health problems, she got blind. But when she got blind, she developed this huge clairvoyance, and she tells us that it's really, really hard for people to how can I put this? It's to try to fool her when it comes to their really intention, because the color changes. She's always talking with us about that, and that's very, very rich experience, very interesting to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Also, the other interesting thing was about sound. I thought that was interesting, because they have been alluding several times with this idea of sound and also of the wavelengths as well. Those are two things that had to kind of come together as they were understanding a lot of this. So I thought that was very, very interesting. And I think too, a lot of the science that is coming is saying, we cannot see those colors, but it doesn't mean it's not there. And it was just very interesting. So anyway, just wanted to. All right. So are we ready for the next one?
Yes,
Yes.
dear. Yes, yes,
Dear,
dear.
I need to get my cord, my dog just unplugged. Hold up, hold up.
That's so cute.
Yes, I'm like, I don't know how much battery I have left. And she just went right through it. There you go. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we're gonna end with chapter 12. I have over here on the side here, on the upper left, it says we're on minute 37. So even though the time might say something, we're good. Are we good? Yes.
Yes, I am. I am.
I just want to make sure. Great. Okay, so
Yes, totally. Okay, go ahead. Use
thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you so much. Chapter 12 connects to chapter 11, as Chris beautifully put it, right? They have like these five individuals that Andre gets an opportunity to go and they all visit. They're like in hospice. I feel like they have these terminally ill. They're terminally ill, and they're not going to continue here. They're going to disincarnate. So that's what this chapter 12 is about. So, chapter 11, he introduces a little bit of the background. In chapter 12, now, um, all they do is they're going to go and pick them up. So, one by one, they bring them to Ale. Jesus, is that how you say her name? Let me see. Adelaide's.
Adelaide.
There you go. That's where Becerra de Meneses was, right? And so when they're there, they bring them over. What ends up happening is they get together, and we're going to talk a little bit about the process of how they come together. So, like, they create the circle, and then using volitation, they go up over the atmosphere, and then what the whole point is for them to feel what it is to be lighter because they're about to disengage, right? And then they bring them down and then they take them back. So that's what pretty much 12 is. So that's why it's literally called a training expedition because they're training them. So one of the interesting things is that process that they do it. Once it's a one-on-one therapy basically. So when they're doing this therapy to take them over the atmosphere, they choose one leader of the group, right? So that's one person who obviously has the higher ability to retain the energy. once they establish who the leader is going to be, they place themselves in a way to like protect everyone. So in other words, so it's one disincarnate spirit and then one that's still incarnate, right? So they're like sandwiched in between. So once they create that circuit, then the leader says, okay, let's do this. So he or she will activate that energy, and then they're all holding hands, and then they all go right up, literally past the atmosphere. And they mentioned the stratosphere and the ionosphere, which are two levels, two layers above, right? So obviously there's lots and lots of energy. But what's interesting, as they're doing this process to feel lighter, one has to imagine this, right? Because re- remember, dear friends, there's these physical laws, right? The laws of science that need to be honored, right? I think it's safe to say that that this happens all the time. That there's order in nature, in existence, in the universe, and so it's just interesting how they have to learn how to navigate the different gas exchanges, because it's a very different what's happening out in the atmosphere, but also the type of energy and how close they are. And it does mention there the cosmic ray, and that's what they're feeling, all of that. So once they're there, the whole idea is that they invigorate their perispirit for that disengagement. So it's like they're going up there, they're feeling the lightness, it's like a therapy, and then they come back. When they come back, they describe that the energy is so powerful from even just the leader, but everyone there, that the person who is sick might wake up like, oh, I had a dream, or somehow they have this like zap of energy that's like a residue from the consequence of having that higher energy. Eventually they will come, not down, but they do mention there might be like a really high. It's almost like I can imagine this, like when we're having like sugar, we have that sugar rush, and then we come low. It's almost that process that they describe, that they're going to have it. But interesting, even though those souls, like these, the five guys that are taken there, Dimas, uh, Adelaide, Calvanti,
Albina.
Yo, and who was the other? Albina. Yes, thank you. Right. Even though those guys are up there, they still don't have that mental capacity to fully understand. So when they come back, they would just have like sensations, and they'll say, "Oh, I feel like I went to heaven," etc. So that's kind of like the process, I think. And to just so we can bring some points to this, one of the I started to ask a couple of questions as reviewing this. The very, very first one is, why this training expedition? Like, why go out of the way to do this, right? And I really think it's a place for us to think this is God's love, this is God's mercy. These are people, these are family members that are very, very sick, and physically they're under a lot of pain in some of the circumstances, right? So so we can imagine, to disengage the heaviness on the body, right, to ease that pain, to alleviate, they have this. Now, Andre doesn't say how these people are chosen, right? We don't know, because I don't think that was the point. It was really maybe for us to be like, okay, like, it might happen for some, it might not for others, but these five souls, these five brothers and sisters, they really needed that therapy, and that's beautiful. Another question we can ask ourselves, like, what is the location? How does the location influence this, right? We know that they picked specifically the house where the children are, right? Where Rosea Jimenez was, because of the vibrations. And again, somebody could come and say, well, aren't they higher spirits? Like, why do they need to do all of this? But I think Andre has really, really helped us to understand those physical laws, and they need to be preserved. They need to be honored. And the way that they are able to work at our vibration is really through those energies. And so our homes can become these portals, right, for them to assist. So that's a beautiful collaboration. Another question that I ask myself, like, well, then how does my field of vibration collaborate into this? What can I do? And I think that Adelaide was our role model, in this sense, because even before the chapter to this, looking at her, right, indirectly, Andre is telling us, look at what she does. Like, I think he stepped it up a notch because she was very giving. She was working at this house with the children. And so that is an absolutely food for thought for us, like the charity or the fraternity, the giving, putting others before us, right? On top of the practice of it, practice of spirituality and being in this vibration. And those are the things that we start to build, and then our homes start to emanate this. And then, well, voila, the spirits, right? We do the math. Another question that we can ask, because we now know that they chose Adelaide's location instead of the other four. You mentioned the word children, right? And so there are two things that we can think about. One, well, literally the children. We remember what Chris beautifully put that, and also Joan also mentioned about, because Andre does a comparison. What does Casa Transitoria have to do with this beautiful home? We have children here. Over there, we have these souls that are so low that even Andre mentions coming to earth was a relief. That's how low they were. But what's the comparison? And he says, because we plant the seed, as John said, right, in Chris. So now coming into this place with Adelaide, think about it, dear friends, that was planting a seed, because he says that they at night they would take the children and teach them things. And think about these children that were abandoned, some of them maybe orphans, some of them might have just been abandoned. And these are generations that are going to grow up in society, and if they don't get that love, they could grow up thinking nobody loves me, and they feel rejected. And then what kind of society are we building? And then those could be potentials to be in those lower zones. So I think that's the one thing we can think about in the potential of children. But even us as adults, right? Because maybe a kid might not pick this book up unless we make the kid version. How can this then apply to us? Well, think about this as a spiritual child, right? A lot of us are still spiritual children. And so that's alluding to plant the seed. Plant the seed. So as you're growing, as you're learning, we do not succumb, right? But we always progress better and better. So I thought that was a beautiful food for thought for us. Another question that was very interesting was the religious aspect. The first time I read this, I stopped and said, really? Are they like judging religions? I thought, erase. That's precisely what we want to remove. He actually was, I think he was honoring that, because when they were in volitation, right? They were going up the atmosphere, and they were like, "What is this?" They used the references of the church, whether it was Catholic, whether it was Christian. And what was beautiful was when that happened, like their faith, their trust in the process helped. And guess what? The vibrations of that current were stabilized, because anytime they were starting to fear, like Demas was the one that was kind of scared in that circle. He was the only one that didn't mention God, which was interesting, because on the previous chapter, he was praying, but for some reason that moment he forgot. But the Catholic Cavalcanti, he started saying a prayer, and then I can't remember her name. Albina,
Cavalcante.
yeah, Albina started
Albina.
praying, right? And so they held on to their faith. So I think it's safe to say that one of the things to know is to say, religion or spirituality is a foundation for our morality, and then we keep building. And I think that was very, very, very important, because it doesn't matter. It's those vibrations. That was lovely. And the last question, as we're ending this, just because it's a touchy subject with hospice or terminally ill. And I have to say that I thought about a coworker who he disincarnated of COVID last year, but before that, he was in the hospital in coma for about 3 weeks, right? And it was a very, very difficult moment for all of us as coworkers working at a school, and with all of that, what was going to happen. And this took me back to that time to think, now I know that perhaps he had this experience, right? He had a moment of where the spirits were helping him disengage and reinvigorate his fair spirit, right? So it's knowing this, like, am I being selfish? Because I asked myself, am I being selfish for like knowing this when it's not my pain, it's the other pain? But I think it goes both ways. I think this training is for the souls that, they signed up for that very, very difficult expiation of having a terminal illness, but also even for ourselves. And it's okay to hurt. I think it's okay to feel the pain because we're seeing people who we love, right? If we're in that case, that are like, that are slowly disengaging from this, right? But at the same time, it gives us a message of hope. It gives us, right, to understand that they are actually healing in that state. And what is my part, right? I want to be sending those vibrations and sending that love. But again, having this knowledge can make a big difference. If we don't know this, it's okay. I didn't know this actually because I'm just reading this book. But I went back to that place. I said, wow, if from now on, if unfortunately, right, I would have to be in this situation, I'm gonna remember this. And actually, just to finish out, we had a sister from one of our spiritual groups here in the from California. She disincarnated and she was very, very sick. And I sent my friend, please, we need to read this. This is amazing. This sister is probably has been in so much bliss, from that perspective for a long time. And that's beautiful. And just send her a prayer. So it was a very, very beautiful chapter, lots of food for thought, and very sensitive subject. So thank you, friends, for allowing me to talk about this. But I know it's easier said than done because it's very, very painful. But I mean, at least we know, maybe now with the war too, it's like, what about those people that cannot be moved? At least they're getting some assistance. And I know it sounds really out there, but I mean, we are spiritists and we're here to believe in this platform, all of this, right? So using that knowledge, at least we can pray and be like, thank you. Thank you, God, for your mercy and for your love. So yeah.
That's so beautiful, so beautiful, and placing all this knowledge in those practical situations that all of us will have to face in life, or we have already faced in life. This is
Yeah.
very powerful. A very interesting thing that you brought up is how our mental attitude changes when we are in that type of situation as spiritists, right? Because we know that we have this amount of power and possibilities in terms of thought, and that our thoughts, they can actually have a material intervention in those situations. So it changes everything, especially our prayer. And am I being selfish? It's very, very interesting to think like that, because as we have put here, we are spiritists. We believe in all of these postulates and paradigms. So um, I think that we, at the end of the day, must be sending the love and trying to instrumentalize all this knowledge the best way we think to help others. This is beautiful, so beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, do you guys want to say something before we start? We're sorry we have passed our time, guys, but uh, the recording, it's not gonna be much. Actually, it's not gonna be um, much more. Chris, do you want to say something, bro, before we finish?
Just thank you both, thank you a lot.
Oh,
Thank you
thank you
so
so
much.
much, dear. Do you
Yeah.
want to say something?
I just want to say thank you, and friends, please read the book. It is
Yeah.
beyond. I mean, it is beyond. I think we're the ones in training too. Yeah. But
Yes,
you
yes,
would
it's
hide us
beyond.
under it.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. We're being trained. So thank you.
This is so powerful. Thank you guys so much. We thank all our friends that are still here with us. We thank everybody that is accompanying the studies while it's already released on the Facebook page or the YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much. We're gonna be here next week to um, study more chapters on day 4. Thank you guys I haven't said this today, but I'm not opening my camera here because the state I live in Brazil, my internet connection is not working fine. So this is why I haven't opened. I don't know why my photo did not show today, but we'll pray, and next week we're gonna be able to make the studies with all our cameras very, very open. Thank you guys so much. I see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye,
See you
guys.
next week.
See
Bye.
you. Bye.